welcome back to Tank TV, and today we're going to go over my 4 top tips for crystal clear water. Okay, tip number 1 is going to be lighting. So lighting is probably one of the biggest factors that causes a large amount of algae bloom within the water column itself. Probably one of the biggest mistakes that new fish keepers make is it's nice to turn up, wake up in the morning, have your lights on, so while you're having your breakfast or you're having your coffee, and you can see the fish, you can see the tank itself. So this is 6-7 o'clock in the morning. You have them running all through the day, and then again, obviously in the evening, you're having them running again through the evening and night until you go to bed at 11 o'clock. So you're looking at a long period of lighting. Lighting, like I said before, can cause and does feed and regenerate algae that is floating in your water. So this tank is an example. I only run these lights from about 3:30 through to 11. About 3-4 hours in that time is also ramp up from 0%, and the lights are only running at about 30% when they're at their maximum for about 2 hours. One of the key things is limit your lighting. Okay, lighting will cause that algae to bloom. It will also, if you're dealing with a green tank at the moment or you're doing a water change, water's nice and clear, and by the next day you've got a green tank, take a look at your lighting, and it'll probably be the main reason. Tip number 2. Phosphate and nitrate control. In this tank, I run a 0 nitrate and a 0 phosphate parameter within the water. That's why it's not heavily planted, because at the moment it's just not the right parameters to keep a planted tank without overdosing, root tabs. There's no soil in there either. Again, while we're on the subject of algae being caused from excessive lighting or algae bloom, nitrate and phosphate is also a source of nutrition and food for that algae in the water column. So again, if you've got high nitrates, if you've got high phosphates, again, it's going to cause that algae to bloom in the tank. And lower the nitrate, again, it's just something that gives you that extra clear water. So like I said, this runs at 0 phosphate and nitrate ppm. I remove it through resins. The water that goes into the tank comes through at 0 ppm on the nitrate, and again, I've got the resins, C3 resins from Countryside Aquatics to remove nitrate, and if my phosphate's peaking a little bit, obviously I'll put some resin in to deal with the phosphate as well. So one of the key things you also need to be aware of is when you're doing nitrate removal is the key way to remove nitrate and phosphate from the tank is doing water changes. But the biggest problem is, especially if you live down south where we do, the nitrate that comes out the tap is pretty much higher than what's in the tank itself. So even though I'm removing water from the tank to put fresh water in, I'm actually adding nitrate back in. So there's more chance that I would, even though I'd remove nitrate through doing a water change, I'm probably going to be putting more nitrate back in as I add water from the tap. So number 2, like I said, is minimal nitrate, minimal phosphate. If you, especially with nitrate, if you can keep it under that 30-40 ppm on your test kit, you'll be there and you'll be halfway to getting your crystal clear water. Tip number 3, UV sterilizers. The crystal clear water can be done through good husbandry, water changes, maintaining the tank. Tip 4, I'm going to go into things like your floss and your sponges. But again, a little bit of money may need to be sent just to achieve that extra clear water, or the effect that the fish are floating in midair. Now again, we're talking about the algae side of things to achieve. A UV sterilizer, without going into too much detail about stage 1 and stage 2, or level 1 and level 2 of UV sterilization, a UV sterilizer will again neutralize and kill off any floating bacteria that's in your water column, again helping with the clarity of the water. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail now. The UV does have to be set up correctly. You need to be making sure you're running the right size bulb and the right flow rate. Again, if I just use this tank as an example, it's a UV bulb that can handle 2,000 litres. You want to be turning it over, the tank over, or the total water volume over once per hour. So my pump does 1,000 litres per hour on a 1,000 litre tank with the UV bulb that can do up to 2,000 litres per hour. Again, tip number 3, UV sterilizers, again to help kill off any sort of floating algae, which is going to cause the loss of clarity within your water. Tip number 4, filter floss. I swear by this stuff. It is, we've already talked, 1, 2 and 3, we talked about floating algae and the stuff that develops in your water column. This stuff is what really fine tunes your water amongst obviously the PPI, or the lower the PPI in your sponges that you've got in your filtration. Every customer that I visit, again, we will always go in, if we can upgrade the filter in any sort of way, we will do, and we'll talk about the filtration. This is the stuff that once the water has passed through your standard sponges, the small bits, the dust, the small particles, the bits that kind of mist up the water a little bit, this is the stuff that will take it out. So tip number 4, floss. Now, one of the last tips I am going to give, but I didn't include it on the top 4 because it's not always possible, especially if you've got the tank set up already or you've already purchased the tank, is Opti-White or low iron glass. Now, on this tank itself, the entire tank is built from low iron or Opti-White, depending on what you want to call it. Basically, just the difference between low iron or Opti-White glass and standard glass is it has a lower iron, hence the name low iron glass, which means it just gives you more of a 4K image or a 4K look into the tank. Also reduces reflection as well. So with this tank as an example, the front, side, back panels are Opti-White, even though they've been vinyled. Even the sliders on top of the tank are Opti-White. So I just had this thought in my head that when the light penetrates through the glass or bounces off it, the green hue that you get in standard glass, you have a lot less of or none in Opti-White or low iron. So I just had this thought in the back of my head that when the light was penetrating through the sliders or bouncing off the back panel, there was going to project or it's going to bounce a green hue back into the tank water. Again, like I said, if you're in a position where you're just about to order your tank or you're going out to buy one, if you can at least get an Opti-White front panel, yes, you pay a little bit more, but personally, I think it's worth every penny. So that's my 4 top tips on how to achieve crystal clear water. So there should be enough in there. If you're dealing with green water or it's slightly murky, look at your UV sterilizers, your water changes and getting your nitrate and phosphate down. As mentioned earlier, if you're dealing with green water, you're doing a 90% or a big water change, it's clear again, then by the next day, it's going to be, like I said, you're going to be having an algae bloom in your column. So it's going to, your UV sterilizer is going to help with that. And then also, like I said, keeping your nitrate and phosphate down will stop feeding that algae to make it worse. Filter floss, again, if you've got that clear water or you're not getting any sort of green tinge to it, but you've still got the particles, you've got dust or bits of sand or food being kicked out of the pump or out of the filtration, get the filter floss in there. Again, I put it in the sump video that I did a couple of weeks ago. You can buy 2-meter rolls of it from Amazon for $14.99. You literally just cut it to shape and put it, whether it's in your canister filter or in your sump, you just cut it to shape, and like I said, that just really fine tunes the really small particles out of the water that the sponges just can't pick up. Okay, so guys, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. There's going to be plenty coming out over the next few weeks, especially with a lot more sort of fish keeping ideas. And until next time, look after your fish.